Hey guys, welcome back to Sports with Mono and Mono. I'm Jim, and although Steve looks almost identical to Rob, that's not Steve. That's Rob, our producer, filling in for a particular reason. My partner had a little medical episode, and thank goodness he's doing much better. But like I said, you gotta when these things happen, it's kind of a scary situation. But thank goodness he pulled through, and the doctors at Hackensack University Medical Center did a great job in diagnosing this. And Steve is with us and probably watching the show, of course, right now, but on the disabled list. So, Rob, thanks for pinch hitting today.
Anytime, and always help out the team.
Yep. Well, today's December 18th, and as you can see over my left shoulder, it's a week from Christmas, right? Hard to believe. Like time just keeps slipping away. Pandemics again rolling across the country. Everyone's got the flu or the cold, whatever. So, again, just take care of yourself so you can enjoy your Christmas with your families. Right? So,
Yeah,
Rob, let's jump right into the
something.
monologue. Yes, everybody does. My daughter has it, and my brother had it, and it's just crazy. So let's just jump right into it, Rob. We're going to get to the World Cup shortly, but Argentina and Messi are looking pretty good. And of course, we'll get to that in a second. But our monologue is sponsored by Coriano Trucking, of course. And by the way, our sponsor, Mr. Coriano himself, became a grandfather for the second time. So congratulations to him and his daughter Danielle. And yeah, great stuff. So Rob, I just wanted to bring something. It's a sport that I guess if we had to list them on an org chart, right? It's the NFL, it's Major League Baseball, it's the NBA, and it's the NHL. But I want to talk about the NHL because Steve and I are big hockey fans. But Alexander Ovechkin scored his 800th goal. Milestone for sure, because him, Gordie Howe, and Wayne Gretzky are the only other players to have done this. And I just keep thinking, because I know Steve is way on board with the fact that Alexander Ovechkin is just scored his 800th goal. He'll pass Gordie Howe this week. But I still think that 894 goals by Wayne Gretzky is one of the all-time records that I never thought would be broken. And I'm still not certain that it's going to be broken. So I was looking up at the statistics and stuff. And, Wayne Gretzky, if there's ever a question about who the greatest hockey player of all time is, it starts and ends 99. And I mean, when you look at his statistics versus Alexander Ovechkin's, and listen, this is not diminishing anything from Ovechkin. He did win his Stanley Cup, which solidifies his status in hockey lore. But you look at the numbers that Wayne Gretzky put up. I mean, he actually scored 92 goals in one season when scoring 50 was a milestone, right? I mean, he had 200.
How old is he?
Well, Wayne Gretzky retired. He retired at age 36. And that just goes into perspective of how staggering those numbers are. Alex Ovechkin's 37 right now. So, does he have 2 more years? He's not going to score 50 goals anymore. But it's a record that I parallel it with the Lou Gehrig and Cal Ripken thing, right? Lou Gehrig's record we never thought would be broken. DiMaggio's record never thought could be broken. And I'm still going to say that I don't think Wayne Gretzky's record is ever going to be broken. But I'm a big fan of Alexander Ovechkin. He's a tough guy, warrior, and he got to taste the Stanley Cup. And congratulations to him, but he's still 94 goals away at age 37. Amazing, right?
But that sport's not easy, you know.
Huh?
That sport's not easy, and there's not a lot of longevity to it.
That's exactly my point. A couple of, rare guys like Chris Chelios played into his 40s and, those kind of guys. But yeah, to score that kind of goals. Wayne Gretzky had like 12 seasons. He's a 9-time MVP in the National Hockey League. That's amazing. That's amazing. But Steve and I always talk about it. I think Steve still thinks there's a chance he could break this record. I do not. We got a great, just a great stage going on right now. The World Cup is underway, and we just got a text from Josias, who thanks. We really appreciate you listening, and he's become a loyal fan of ours, and this is what we do it for, right? So, Rod, the World Cup's going on right now. Let's give an update to our fans, right? It's 2-0, and it's so awesome. Like I said, this is the biggest stage. This is the Super Bowl and World Series combined for soccer. And, who's not rooting for Lionel Messi to get that elusive World Cup, right?
Absolutely.
And the game starts off, right? We're only one half in. He scored a goal on a penalty kick, and he assisted on just an amazingly beautiful goal in the World Cup. They're up 2-0, and I don't know. What are your thoughts? Do you think that France and then Kylian Mbappe and those guys, Giroud, those guys are great players, but I tell you, this may be Messi's moment.
Well, I'm listening to the broadcast too a little bit on the background here, and they're pretty much saying if Argentina scores one more goal, that should really ice the cup. Usually, unlike other sports, a 3-goal lead is pretty insurmountable. Two you can come back from. 3 you probably can't.
You're a little choppy there. You're a little choppy. Can you turn your volume up a little too? Yep, there you go. Yeah, so listen, we got one half World Cup soccer to go. Third place game yesterday, which I talked to one of our actually soccer aficionado loyal listeners, Diego Cruz. And I kind of said, why did we have to play a third place game, right? And he brought it up that there's a lot of money on the line, but does anybody ever remember who comes in third in the World Cup or who came in third in any other sport, right? No, right? But this is great, and I'm pulling for Messi. We thought this could have been either Messi or Ronaldo's, and we saw how the Ronaldo story played out, which really wasn't good. Kind of almost a sad ending to a great career. But this guy Messi, he looks like this is his moment, and I'm pulling for him. So we'll give you an update before the show ends, but I think Argentina is well on their way.
They are.
So, Rob, let's just jump right into the NFL. And boy, what a crazy day yesterday was, right? The Vikings down 33-0. And I was watching the game, of course, but by 33-0, I was flipping around. I was watching your Seton Hall Pirates. I was watching anything else that was on television. And then I just said, just let me double check, So I flipped back, and it's the third quarter, and the largest comeback in NFL history is underway. And it's kind of amazing. I mean, you don't know whether to give Cousins the credit or Ryan the opposite of that. It's just crazy. And you know what? I like this Jeff Saturday thing, but you just can't let 33 points leading at halftime and lose that football game.
That pretty much sealed his fate.
It pretty much did, I think. You're right, But what do what do you think of when you watch a game like that, right? You think of the Bills Oilers back in the Frank Reich days, comes off the bench and leads them to they were down 32 points. But this was 33. And you know what? I don't know. Does this make Minnesota more of a contender? Do you think they have the ability to challenged with the 49ers. What's going on there, right? With the Brock Purdy thing. And wow, what a turnaround. Who would have thought this for the 49ers going into this season, uncertain about the quarterback? Their number one pick goes down. The guy they were trying to kick out of Dodge for 2 years comes in, leads them to an excellent record. Then he goes down, and now Brock Purdy, also known as Mr.
Mr. Irrelevant.
Irrelevant. Right.
Mr. Irrelevant.
So I could say this right now. Brock looks pretty good.
I tell you, though, the 49ers have a pretty – if this guy Purdy leads them to, say, the Super Bowl, what do you do with Trey Lance next year?
You can't go backwards. You can't go backwards, right? Very similar to the Zach Wilson thing, right? Who Mike White comes off, but we're talking about Mike White. We're talking even in the picture, certainly White in New York is beloved. Wilson's going to start the game today, but boy, if he doesn't play well, it's not going to go pretty in New York today.
I mean, it's very rare to see any athlete.
But I gotta tell you though, you bring up a good point about Trey Lance, right? I mean, that was like a risky pick kind of thing. Probably only played I think 13 or 14 games in his college career, right? And you look at Brock Purdy, who played pretty much for 4 years, right? He had played over close to 40, if not more than 40 games at Iowa State. But that's kind of a great Cinderella story. I'm enjoying it. And they look tough to beat. They look like the team to beat. I mean, go ahead, Rob.
I'm saying they're tough to beat, and if they get Debo back for the playoffs, that makes it even more of a challenge for anybody to stop them. And you and I are Giant fans. So I'm looking for somebody to knock off the Eagles at this point. So I think the Niners have the best chance to do that.
Well, listen, I mean, the NFC, there really is only, if you were to say, let's pick the 3 teams right now that are actually contenders, right, to get to the Super Bowl. It would have to be the Niners. It would have to be the Cowboys. It'd have to be the Eagles, right? I'm not sure I could put the Vikings in there, but they're on the fence, right? So there's 4 teams. And look at the divisions. You have the NFC South with Tampa Bay leading the division with a 6-7 record. Crazy, right? And then on the other side, right, the AFC took place. A great game last night with the Buffalo Bills and Miami Dolphins. Typical Buffalo weather, right? Freezing cold, snow falling down. And then I flipped around and I was watching it and I said, oh my God, Miami's beating Buffalo in Buffalo. And I said, oh God, this is a time for Josh Allen and Buffalo, right? The preeminent season favorites going to the Super Bowl. And I keep saying, you got to win those games. And they won it last night, 32-29. But overall, they're going to still have to go through Kansas City. And I think Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes look really formidable against the Buffalo Bills. So don't book your Super Bowl tickets yet if you're a Buffalo Bills fan. And I know plenty of Buffalo Bills fans. Plenty. Right? So, Rob, let's talk about from last week our picks, right? I was 2-1. I had a pretty good record the past 6 weeks, actually. But Steve was 3-0, rebounded from a couple of tough weeks. But he was indeed 3-0. I'm 2-1, and you're going to fill in for Steve on his picks, but I'm going to jump right into my picks for the week. And I got Philadelphia at Chicago. And again, I'm not a big Chicago Bears fan. I don't know I don't know what to make of that franchise. I don't know if Fields is the guy or not the guy, but they have, a lot of holes. But Philadelphia looks really, really good. And I just love the way that Jalen Hurts has been handling himself. And listen, he's going to become paid just like it's hard to even say this, Kyler Murray, who's probably, I think, the most overpaid player in the National Football League. But Hurts and the Eagles look really, really good. So I'm taking them on the road in Chicago. And every time I think of Chicago and Philadelphia playing in, in the late stages of the NFL season, I think of the Fog Bowl and all that kind of stuff, right? But I think Philadelphia, I think they coast today. I think they coast. Another game, kind of talked about Mr. Irrelevant before, but how about these two teams, Pittsburgh and Carolina? And again, everybody's now all on board with Carolina. Like, they're 5-8, and they're the hottest team in the league. The ironic thing about it, Rob, I just said before, Tampa Bay's leading the division, right? It's 6-7. So they're not out of it, right? But I like Pittsburgh today. I like Mike Tomlin is not sitting well with him. This could be his first losing season in at least 10 years, if not longer. So I like Pittsburgh today, and I'm not.
1 second about my thoughts on Pittsburgh. I'm a Steelers fan. We are 5-8 right now, and we have 3 close losses that we could easily be 8-5.
Yep.
So, hey, at least they were relevant until last week. I count relevancy as you go on the CBS Fox broadcast and your team is in the hunt, for playoffs. So yeah. I think we lost that this week, but up until last week, again, any of those games go either way, and they're right back in the thick of things. So We'll see.
Yep. But I like Pittsburgh today, and we just got a comment because I mentioned Zalson before. So one of our loyal listeners, Mike Garvey, just chimed in and said, "I back Zach," and both Steve and I were all in on Zach Wilson. I just hope he can actually mature before our eyes because he seems almost infantile, and he's on a big stage today. But listen, I like the guy, but Steve brought it up last week about him not even being the captain of his team. When is the quarterback not the captain of your team, right? So it could get ugly if he doesn't play well today, but he is going. And Mike, like I said, I'm on record. I was all in on him being the second pick, but he's got to grow up. He's got to grow up. To Rob, my third game, and again, couple other teams which don't really figure in the mix here, right? New England against Las Vegas. And I don't even know what to make of this Las Vegas. I know plenty of Raiders fans that were all in on David Carr, Derek Carr, and I'm saying he hasn't won anything. And then they say, well, he doesn't have the pieces around him. And I said, well, every preseason, right? They go, oh, the Raiders restocked. The Raiders are ready for bear. They're in Las Vegas. This is what Al Davis dreamed of, right? And I just can't figure them out. So I may regret this, but I'm going with Las Vegas today to beat New England because I just don't think New England has enough pieces. I like Mac Jones. I'm a big fan of his. Of course, Devin McCourty, former St. Joe's guy, most likely going into the Hall of Fame at some point after retirement.
Agreed.
But I'm taking Las Vegas today. So to recap my picks, I got Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and not just because you're a Pittsburgh fan. I've been a Pittsburgh fan. But Rob, what milestone just took place this weekend? What is it?
50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception.
Thank you very much for hitting that hanging curveball out of the ballpark. And I can't believe it because I told you, Steve and I were both watching that game, and it was 1972. And it was unbelievable to see. it's a moment that will forever be in NFL lore. And I can't believe it's 50 years. Oh, I was,
Wow.
let's
Yeah.
just say without going into my age, I wasn't even 10 yet. How about that? Right.
Oh boy.
So Rob, give us your 3 picks today, will you?
All right. Give me 1 second. All right. Hold on 1 second. All right. I'm taking the Lions over the Jets. I think the Lions are on a roll here, and hey, they came in and spanked our Giants a few weeks ago, and while Jets have a better defense, I just think this Dan Campbell, who was being criticized earlier this season for being all rah-rah with no substance, well, now the Lions have teeth all of a sudden. And
well, listen, when you look at the Detroit Lions, and again, nobody can figure out this Jared Goff thing, right? He was horrible when he started his career, and then for 3 seasons he was awesome, and that could have been under the Sean McVay tutelage, right? And then, they basically just traded him straight up for Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford goes on to win a Super Bowl. But look at the talent this guy's got around him, right? Jamison Williams is finally back, and this kid St. Brown, and they got a pretty decent running game. So I'm not surprised you're taking that. I don't know if it's more that you believe in Dan Campbell and the Lions, or if you're just not sold on Zach Wilson and the Jets. But I think the Jets defense today could wreak havoc on Jared Goff. So, all right, good luck with that pick. You're going with the Lions today.
My second pick, I'm taking the Chargers over the Titans. I think the Chargers are, they missed the playoffs last year, obviously, in that great game to end the season. Probably January, right? Probably earlier this year, actually. So I think the Chargers are starting to get some momentum going, and I think the Titans are a faltering ship right now. Who I think they've worn out their Tannehill situation, and they're going to start rebuilding. I mean, Derrick Henry is great, but he's due to start falling apart.
But
so I think that's starting to happen now.
Yeah, I have a hard time figuring out this Tennessee team, and I don't know if it's all on Tannehill or not. And you're right; they got one of the best running backs in the league, but they just don't seem to. They come up one week and play a great game, and then they look like crap. And there's a lot of controversy going on with Vrabel and John Robinson, who got fired last week, most likely because he traded AJ Brown, who's now in Philadelphia and flourishing. So I go along with you on that, and I'm a big buyer of Justin Herbert, but the Chargers, I think they're better than their record indicates, but to compete with Mahomes and Buffalo in the AFC, they got to turn the corner here.
And my last pick of the week, I have some faith in our New York Giants going in there tomorrow night on the national stage, and Daniel Jones has, you got to figure, anywhere from $5 to $15 million riding on this game tomorrow night. Right? He wins the game, he gets at least a transition tag or franchise tag this year. He loses the game, and he's a backup somewhere next year. So I think Daboll and the squad and whatnot, I think they're going to right the ship here. And I think we go in tomorrow night and upset the commies and win that game.
Is it tomorrow night or tonight? I think it's tonight.
Yeah, tonight. You're tonight. You're right. Tonight.
Okay.
My bad. Tonight.
Well, listen. Let's talk about it. And you're right. We could talk about the financial piece of this, and a lot is riding on Jones. They've looked terrible the past 4 weeks. They're lucky Brian Daboll doesn't have a stroke on the sideline because, it started out so promising. And I'm just not so sure. And listen, I'm a Daniel Jones fan, as you know, and a Barkley fan, but Barkley hasn't done much lately. Is it back to this old offensive line not gelling? I don't know. But I think they're going to keep this game close, but I think the momentum that Tyler Heineke has, and I'm a big Ron Rivera fan, like Steve brought up last time. So I just I don't think they have it together enough to go into Washington and win this. And Chase Young is back, so listen, if that offensive line's got holes, he's going to find it, and it's going to be a long night for Daniel Jones. I will have my Daniel.
Here's my take real quick. If I am our new GM, right? His name's escaped me right now. Right now, if I'm our new GM and I have
Joe Schoen.
If I had a wallet now full of money to pay either Daniel Jones or Saquon Barkley, I'm sorry. I mean, Barkley's not getting it. You can find a good, decent running back almost anywhere right now. You know,
Yeah.
and it's gonna hurt the Giant fan to see him go next year and go to the Patriots and run for 1,200 yards. But if we're gonna build this team right, I think you put that money into Daniel Jones for one more year with a transition tag and get him some damn weapons to throw to. We're both Notre Dame guys, right? I would love Michael Mayer on this team next year. He's going to be the next great
one. Okay, right.
He's going to be the next great tight end in this league, and if we have that tight end, keep Bellinger, okay, but we have those. Everybody has two tight end sets now anyway. Michael Mayer on this team, again, you'll find somebody on free agency, but he's going to be one of those 10, 12-year tight ends that are going to be.
Oh, listen, absolutely. I would love for Michael Mayer to go to the Giants, but, they got to figure out the quarterback situation first. And like I said, I think Ryan Dable believes that Daniel Jones can be an NFL quarterback. And this is the first time he's actually had a decent coach, and he's turned it around. He's played very well this year, right? And Barkley, you're right about that. You got guys like Boston Scott in Philadelphia, which nobody even knows about. And he just, all he does is score touchdowns, right? The old Chris Carter parable, right? So anyway, they Phil, and you're right. They're not going to be able to pay both. They will franchise Jones because unless you have your plan mapped out, you got to pay him the $20 million that he's going to get. So, okay. So Rob's picks: Detroit, the Chargers, and the Giants. Rob, one other. Before we move on, I want to talk a little bit about college football, and we know we got the college football playoffs coming up, right? Georgia, Ohio State, TCU, Michigan. Can't wait for those games to come back. But there was some other good stuff yesterday, and this is kind of close to my heart because I have a nephew that goes to the Colorado School of Mines. And you go, I don't even know what that is, and most people don't, but these are just genius kids, engineers, right? But the school played in the Division II finals yesterday. They lost, but they actually made it and played a team. And if you follow college football like we do, right? Division II, Ferris State was always one of those great Division II teams, always in the mix, and they did win the championship. But I told my sister whose son Spencer goes to the Colorado School of Mines, and yes, the kid's a genius. But I thought that was notable. And one other thing, all-time bowl record set for rushing by a name should be very familiar to some of our listeners, of course, Frank Gore Jr. The Southern Miss yesterday broke the all-time bowl record of 329 yards rushing. And listen, you and I and Steve have talked about Frank Gore Sr., who's the fourth all-time leading rusher. I don't put him in the same category as Emmitt Smith and Jim Brown and Walter Payton, but he had a great career. But his son, Southern Miss yesterday,
Wow.
329 yards.
That same school as Brett Favre, right?
That is correct, sir. Very good.
Well, Jim,
So those were some notable things, huh?
1 month from now, I will be in Dallas, Texas, doing a college football showcase game. So your show will be live from there. So
Of course.
we'll see if I can,
Awesome.
get a player to pop on or two.
And Rob, yeah, that's awesome. There was also another game yesterday. It was Jackson State versus North Carolina Central. And why was this relevant? Right? Because it's the Deion Sanders coach team. His son is the quarterback. And, you thought the game was over, and then Jackson State and Sanders throws this touchdown pass. It goes to overtime. Ultimately, North Carolina Central kind of blew up the whole Cinderella story because Jackson State was 12-0. And
Wow.
Deion Sanders is going to University of Colorado. But I wanted to bring that up for a particular reason, because he did take this job, but he was on the sideline yesterday. I don't know if he was involved in the coaching or whatever, but he's taking his son to Colorado with him. So he's going to be the quarterback. But it was odd for me that he goes there and he makes the statement telling people, enter the transfer protocol because I'm bringing my horses to the stable here, right? And I thought that was a little hard for me to say, wait a minute, these are scholarship kids at Colorado. Yes, we haven't seen Colorado football be irrelevant since the Bill McCartney days, right back in the 80s. I think they might even have won a national championship, if not played in the final. But I thought that was a little odd, but it was actually a great football game yesterday. I don't know if you caught it.
Well, I missed that, but I'm curious to see. Last year they had the number one recruit in the nation flipped and went to Jackson State. Let's see if he goes to Colorado now.
You could 100% bet he's going to Colorado.
I tell you,
100%.
It'll be fun because Colorado is a team that, yeah, all right, they're going to be left behind in the Pac-12, I believe, right? But they're right Pac-12, but they're still known. That's my point. They're still a known team.
I don't know if they're in the Pac-12.
Everybody expected Prime to go take some job in Florida, so give him some credit for taking a job that's kind of out of his wheelhouse a little bit, and it'll be fun to watch.
Yeah. But there were some really good football games yesterday in college football. It was awesome. You thought it was an off week after the Army-Navy game, right?
Who won last night? I was watching the Buffalo game. Who won that BYU SMU game? Any idea?
I do not know. I don't know, actually. I watched only like a quarter of it. I don't know who won.
I mean, I was shocked to see the game on Channel 7, for God's sakes, right?
Hey, it's bowl season. They're all on prime time,
But Channel 7?
You're a little choppy today there, Rob. You're freezing up. So, Rob, let's jump into a couple other things. Let's just talk about Major League Baseball for a minute and the absolute insanity of money that's being spent on these free agents. And a couple of big notables. We talked about the Judge signing, and we talked about Verlander probably going to the Mets, and he did go to the Mets. Carlos Correa deal. I mean, we're talking 13-year contract for a guy who, listen, he's a very good player, okay? But when we look at overall numbers, he's a 279 lifetime hitter. has never driven in 100 runs. He's an excellent fielder, but you can get good fielders that can't hit. I keep scratching my head, and you look at these other things. The Red Sox signed this Japanese guy, right? Never proven in Major League Baseball. He's getting a ton. The Mets signed this pitcher, Kobe or Kobaya, whatever his name is. He's getting the money, right? So any question about whether Steve Cohen is going to starting money, I guess those questions have been answered. And and again, we talked about Brandon Nimmo. I like the kid. Well, you look at the numbers again. He's an excellent fielder, but he's a 260 lifetime hitter. And just the money is becoming really, really insane. And the Yankees, as to not get left in the dust, right? I thought they would have made a run at Verlander. Okay, but now we know he's best friends with Max Scherzer, and that's where he's going. So the Yankees had to pay Carlos Rodon. I mean, look at the money: 6 years, 160 million for a guy that is basically almost a career 500 pitcher. Yes, he had a great career with the Giants 2 years ago, right? Great year. Not saying he's not a very, very good pitcher, but I mean, a 500 pitcher worth $160 million. That's what the going rate is.
I tell you, we're gonna have the best rotation in baseball.
What, the New York area?
Yankees, best rotation in baseball.
Yeah, we think that year after year after year, though. It drives me crazy.
We'll see.
They got some decisions to make, but my point is, we're talking about record amounts of money for guys that, I mean, if you look in baseball lore, is this Ernie Banks? Is this Ozzie Smith? Is this, somebody like that? What were those guys worth, right? I mean, today's day and age, crazy money. So, Rob, let's move on to our random points of interest, which, of course, is sponsored by Lynch Toyota of Manchester, Connecticut. And, Rob, I'm going to lead off with one random point, which is very dear to Steve and I's hearts, because our former football coach at St. Joe's, Bert Ammerman, who's a dear friend of ours. And like I said, we've known him since we were 14 years old, and just a great football coach. State champion at Old Japan, and I get a chance to see him at a St. Joe's game every now and then. But Bert, this past week was 34 years since that Lockerbie, Scotland plane bombing, right? And why is this relevant? And all those Syracuse fans, students that were on that plane, 34 of them. So just an unbelievably horrific event in history. But Bert, who's, like I said, he's going to be on our show and we can talk about it, but his brother was on that plane. And he just never, ever relinquished his drive to bring these people to justice. And they did. They got the guy that actually made the bomb. And, if you saw it, you probably saw Bert on some of the news interviews and so forth. But our heart goes out to those families, the 34 years, and they just did a memorial up at Syracuse. 34 students from one university. It's just terrific. But I give all the credit to him and the other relatives that he worked with to bring these guys to justice. Just a remarkable ending, if you will. Only if he they put this guy away forever, but just very dear to our heart, and wanted to give a shout out to Bert and congratulations on bringing this to justice. And it'll never supplant the losses that you guys felt, but it was amazing. 34 years ago, Rob, that was.
Wow.
Yeah. So listen, a couple other quick things. While we're talking about Syracuse won the men's NCAA soccer championship this year. They're first in that. And the sports lore of Syracuse University. We got a lot of dear friends of mine that I went to college with from Syracuse. but I wanted to give a shout out to the men's soccer championship because they won it. They won it. Couple
Right,
of,
Jim,
couple
hold
of,
on, hold on real quick.
yeah.
We're gonna have a penalty kick for France coming up.
All right.
They have a chance.
So
of
that's
getting back
what
in this.
that's what 10 feet from the goal. Like he's not going to score it. You know, I mean, come on. So let's just say it's 2-1, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah. Anyway, Rob, couple other things. I brought up the Army Navy game last week, right? But Ken Intanola, hard to pronounce the last name, but 15 years Army Navy's head coach, and I always thought he was outstanding. But it goes to show, you lose to Army, it's like Ohio State, Michigan. You know.
Yeah, the guy gets fired in the locker room, for God's sakes. That's total classless, if you ask me, for a service organization too. You know.
Exactly my point. Exactly why I brought it up. Yep. So Rob, in NCAA, so Caleb Williams wins the Heisman Trophy. Really no surprise, right? I don't know that he's playing in the bowl game. I think he's still injured and whatnot, but congratulations to him. I mean, I think this is an absolute reflection on the head coach that this Lincoln Riley has this offensive mind. He could dissect the talent of these players and just light it up. And that's I think that's his third Heisman Trophy winning quarterback. So congratulations to him.
Wow.
And Rod, there's one other point I wanted to bring up because this drives me crazy. And not crazy because it's just hard for me to understand with the technology and the equipment that these players in the NFL have now, right? The helmets, I mean, they're actually like scientifically engineered that you could probably jump off the roof head first and be fine. And I look at it because I think back when Steve and I played, and we're not so old that it was the leather helmets with no masks, but these helmets were absolutely a joke, right? And this was while the rules were you could just knock heads. But the equipment today, and I'm bringing this up because I watched Russell Wilson the other night actually sustain goal
2-2.
2-2.
Mhm.
Woo. Okay. But anyway, my point was with Russell Wilson and these helmets. I mean, he literally looked like basically an innocent play, hits his head on a grass field and gets knocked for a loop. It's really amazing to me. I just wonder, what is, and you know how much a football helmet must cost nowadays, for God's sakes, in the NFL? It's just hard for me to understand why this keeps happening. And again, we played with equipment that was basically substandard. So, obviously, I'm certain I know I had some concussions and it wasn't diagnosed back then, but it's just something I wanted to bring up because it looks like such an innocent play and he actually got knocked for a loop. It's amazing. Amazing. Anyway, so Rob, that's all our random points of interest. If you have anything, you gave us an update that France has tied it up. It's 2-2 in the World Cup. How much time is left?
I have a glare on the TV. I can't tell from here.
Okay.
Well, hey, we now this is what if you're again, we know Americans are not endeared to the beautiful sport, as they say, but this could be what America needs to get ready for 4 years. This is going to be an exciting finish now. And I know you guys are hockey fans, but that if it goes down to penalty kicks, that's one of the most exciting things in sports. So we'll see what happens.
Actually, but what do they play? They play two 15-minute overtime periods, and if it's not settled, then it goes.
Yes.
Okay. So, Rob, while that's going on in the background, let's move on, unfortunately, to our notable passing segment. And a big name in NBA, Paul Silas, right? Long-time NBA player, long-time coach. His son's the coach of the Houston Rockets right now. 79 years old. But he was an absolutely awesome basketball player and didn't have as much success, but he went to several different teams, but 79 years old. Great player, though.
Mhm.
And Rod, there was also a passing in college football, right? Mike Leach. And Mike Leach had quite a career. You know, there's some controversy about Mike Leach, you know, about his methods and so forth. And he was pretty much a strict disciplinarian, but he had a heart attack last week, never recovered, 16 years old, coached at Washington State, currently it was at Mississippi State. And it's a big loss in college football. Big loss. Texas
I've
Tech.
read a lot of good stories about him this week. Read a lot of cool stories about how he was to the fans and whatnot, and he's real loved in the community, coaching community.
He was,
and he has a pretty good. He has a pretty good coaching tree too, developing.
Yep. So R.I.P. Mike Leach, big loss for college football, and had a great career, 61 years old. And Rob, from the world of old-time baseball, if you will, the Philadelphia Phillies, the 1950 Whiz Kids, as they were known. The last remaining member of that team, Curt Simmons, passed away at 93 years old. And they were known as the Whiz Kids, but they never actually won the World Series, which was surprising. But Curt Simmons did win a World Series with the St. Louis Cardinals in 1964. But the 1950 World Series, they lost to the New York Yankees, right? But the last of the Whiz Kids is no more. 93 years old, Curt Simmons. Rob, another one that we just found out about today, and somebody, you're a big Seton Hall Pirates college basketball guy, Louis Orr, former Syracuse basketball player. And I brought it up before you and I went on the air. I told you, they had the thing called the Louie and Bowie show. It was Louis Orr and Roosevelt Bully. And he was on Jim Boeheim's first season. And Jim Boeheim's been there forever, right?
Forever,
we look at that. But he went on to have a decent career with the Knicks. Then he went into college coaching. Was 5 years at Seton Hall. I think he started at Siena, right, in the MAC conference.
I think Siena, yeah.
Yeah, a rival of my Niagara Purple Eagles.
He was the last coach in Seton Hall to win a NCAA tournament game.
Nice.
I think of the coaches since then, Bobby Gonzalez, Kevin Willard. They never won a game in the tournament. He was the last guy to do it.
Yeah, that's kind of what we would call a drought, right?
Big time.
But Louis Orr was 64 years old, and he was like best friends with Patrick Ewing when he played with the Knicks, and they had that rivalry back then. That was when Big East basketball was must-watch TV. It was great. Great career for him. And Rob, sticking on that, Billy Moore, former basketball coach at UCLA, only women to lead two teams to a national championship. She won one with UCLA. She won one with Cal State Fullerton. And she was also the first women's basketball coach for the women's Olympic team in 1976 in Montreal. She had a great career. Actually, used to coach Pat Summitt, right? Oh. Pat Summitt, probably the all-time winningest coach in NCAA, played under her, and Pat Summitt always referred to her as a mentor. So big loss. And she was only 79 years old, but great prominent career in women's college basketball. Absolutely wanted to make sure we mentioned that. So Rob, listen, let's get back. We'll sign off for this week. I appreciate pinch hitting for Steve. And Steve, recovering nicely. Let's just put it that way. And he'll be back with us next week for sure. Rob, thanks for producing. Love
You
to
got it.
hear from you folks. Send us an email at sportswithmono@gmail.com. And like I said, week after week, we're getting more and more people listening. And I think, that's why we do the show, and we'll be here next week and doing it again. So enjoy the final of the World Cup. Is it Messi? Is it Mbappe? We'll know in about half an hour.
At least. Take care.
If not sooner, if